here that I can filter by. I can also search, get different lists, or I can just browse everything. I have right now I'm just pulling from one site. It's called Reaper, and they have about 4,500 minis. So that's how many minis I have in here. Not all. I have very few of them tagged. That's a lot for me to do. But yeah, that's pretty much it. They all have a ability to kind of drop down. Some of them have more than one image. So I have an option to expand that. You can see all the images. And there's also a link to their that many's page on on the manufacturer's website. In addition to that, it has, oops, no, wrong one. It also lists all the tags that I have for that. It also gives you the option to add tags to it. So I just added that one. It didn't clear, that's why. But it should have gone, I promise. Wings, there they are. Oh, maybe it didn't. Great. Cool, Joe, your thing works perfect. I don't know I did this. 1 second, please. Something. Oh yeah, now it's working. Don't know what I did there. Yeah, so I added that that tag, and now that's there to filter by. The eventual goal is to, this will be an option for users that are logged in. I have all the functionality for users to sign up and log in, but it doesn't really do anything yet. I don't have any kind of permissions or anything like that set up. But eventually they will, be able to submit a tag and then, hopefully have it approved before it actually, gets posted and goes live. But that's pretty much the site. I was talking about my data a little bit and then kind of show you some of the code. This is the main API. It's pretty much what everything looks like. Everything has an ID. Image URLs. For some reason, this is a list and not or it's a string and not a list. So that was a little bit of an issue I had to deal with, and just how I, populated all this data. Yeah, just in any tags or anything like that. I also have the list of just tags. Each tag has an ID, what the tag is actually for, and then it, it's just the mini, each mini that uses this tag, its ID is saved here as well, and then those are referenced. Like this. This was something that kind of caused me a problem, that it didn't give you the name of what it was, because then I have to, anytime I wanted to reference the name of a tag that a mini had, I had to do I had to jump through a bunch of hoops to, basically sort through this list to find whatever this was referencing and all that. It was a pain. But that's pretty much that. So to get all the data, I wrote a command that runs just a Python script. I'm pulling Reaper has an API for their entire product list. Originally, I started with trying some web scraping with Beautiful Soup and Selenium, and then I had the good idea to Google if they had an API. It turned out they did. But in the future, when I do other sites, I probably won't be able to do this. Most don't have an API, so I will be having to build scrapers for those. But this pretty much just loads all the information, sorts through everything that isn't, or basically pulls everything that is a mini and not some other thing, something else like a paint or a paintbrush or something else they sell on their site, and then just saves it to my API. Models are pretty basic. I'm using a many-to-many field to connect the tags or the mini tags to my tag list. Views are also pretty basic, and as well as same for serializers. Pretty much all my everything's. I built everything on one page instead of having a separate Java script. That was the way I like to do it. Pretty much just using Axios to pull. Let me find. This is an example of kind of my main thing. It's just this will link to a page of my API and just pull some data pulls the data from that. I had to map a lot of things. Display detail is something, that's how my show and hide functions work for each individual mini. Is I'm mapping it after I load the data to a true false thing, and that's all those buttons do is true false. And I have some conditionals up in the HTML that will expand that based on, or collapse it based on if it's true or false. And then fixing those that list problem with the image URLs, and being able, and this was something I kind of had to jump through some hoops to pull up the names of the tags instead of just the IDs of the tags, which is what is each mini object has. A bunch of pagination stuff. I have a mounted function that just pulls all the tags, and that's what's pulls all the tags that I have, and that's what's generating my drop down list at the beginning. And then just some stuff to check to see if I have a tag already. So basically, I don't end up recreating tags that have different IDs and something like this. This just checks to see if the tag already exists, and if it is, then it'll create that tag or update it. This isn't working quite right now. That's one of the things that I need to fix. Among other things that I plan to do is fix that. The styling obviously needs some work, and then just adding a lot, getting the user permissions going, and then some more, pulling more minis from more sites. And I think kind of once I'm at that point, I might actually put this live and make this available for people to try out. But that's pretty much it. Anybody have any questions?
One thing that immediately comes to my mind, and this is probably just a simple thing, but I imagine, like, for me, it'd be price. You know what I mean? I would definitely want to search the API for price, because you might find something that's $100 more, but you don't like that much more. Is that something that the APIs easily put in there for you?
Actually, let me see. I have that. This is kind of the model, the API for Reaper, which it does have the price. But that is something, when I do other sites, that'll be something I'll have to pull, and that would be pretty simple to do. I do plan on messing or kind of reformatting my data a lot to have a lot more different things. Instead of just, or I might have an element for price or material or the size of the mini, beside other things that are kind of more meta than the actual descriptions of what the miniature looks like. So yeah, that is something that is an option, and something I probably will, as I go on, I'm sure I'll be adding a lot of stuff like that.
I think Zach just asked us in the chat, but what was your favorite part?
I like, honestly, I kind of like doing the web scraping, the kind of data manipulation. This isn't obviously scraping in here. It's all like, this is kind of what my scraper ended up looking like. And this was mostly working. It took about an hour to go through all of Reaper's stuff, but I kind of like doing this, kind of some data manipulation types of things. So doing both, when I was working on this part of it, even though I didn't use it, and the actual, actually what I used. I think that was the part that it kind of just makes sense to me, and it's still challenging, but it's something I can figure out eventually. Whereas a lot of this other, the view stuff and, Axios and all that kind of, Django REST framework, all that is kind of, it's a little bit harder for my brain to kind of figure out. So that was definitely the part I liked most.
I haven't done anything with scraping, or at least I don't think I have. That's okay. Basically when you're just taking the list information and then splicing it and all that, right? Is that essentially it for the data?
Here, I'll pull this up. Pretty much, it's pointing. You're basically pointing Python at a URL, and then does it really? Maybe this doesn't show it that great. But basically you're pointing it at a site, and it then looks at just the HTML, and you can then direct it to look at certain things like, here it's creating basically a big document, and then it's looking for everything that has this class, and then it saves it. So I can go to, just find something here. I can look at this element and say, okay, if I want an image, I want to pull all the images, I would do something like a loop in this. Geez, thought this would be quicker. So I could go to something like this page and say, okay, for pull up this page, pull up all the, figure out some kind of unique identifying element that would identify buttons or something, and pull the links and say for, go to all the, tell Selenium to go to all these links, and then take all the HTML, find the identifying elements that I want to save based on the tag, some kind of descriptive or tag, whether it be an ID or class name or something like that. And then it just saves it, or you can do whatever you want with it. That's kind of the
how difficult was Beautiful Soup?
It wasn't too difficult. I had also done some web scraping for our Python mini capstone. And so before getting into this project, I had some work on that. It took a little bit of getting used to. A lot of the problem is a lot of this stuff is loaded with JavaScript. So it's actually loading after all the HTML stuff loads. So Beautiful Soup, a lot of these things won't even grab. So that's kind of when you need something else like Selenium that will, it's slower, but it's pretty much interacting with the page, after it's loaded, instead of, just all the, preloaded HTML and all that. But it wasn't kind of, once you get the hang of it, there's plenty of tutorials that are pretty easy to follow along to kind of get the gist of it. And then it's just data manipulation, which the data manipulation can be a pain or can be fun.
So you had to use.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Mine was going a tangent, so you might as well.
Well, I was just going to ask, so you had to use Selenium to go deeper, is what it sounded like, as opposed to Beautiful Soup?
Kind of, yeah. That's kind of a way to think
then we have to go on.
Okay. Yeah, so kind of, like in here, we have all this stuff that's loaded with JavaScript. That's kind of loaded after all of this base HTML and everything. Whereas Beautiful Soup only grabs this stuff, whereas Selenium kind of more, or I guess the way I think of it, it waits for all this, because this script is going to go get a bunch of more content to put onto the page. And that's what Selenium does, is it waits for everything to load, and then it interacts with the page that way.
Wow, that's cool.
Do you have something else, Matthew?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, or Merritt?
All right, nice job, Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was cool. It's always fun seeing I always enjoy seeing all the fun kind of data links and everything. Ron is our next student up.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ron Mansolilli, and welcome to the PASHI project. PASHI is the Portland Affordable Safe Housing Initiative. It was born out of the shared experiences we all have of trying to find housing, which is, always a challenging proposition, and it doesn't, regardless of your means. So when back in December, I was looking for APIs to work on a project, and I ran across the State of Oregon Affordable Housing List API. And, in looking at it, it really resonated with me. And especially when I started thinking about those who are like less privileged, or they're suffering through hard financial times, or even people who are just starting out. And I believe that those issues are just exponentially more difficult. So often when you look at that, it results in individuals having to choose housing over safety, and it's usually through a lack of knowledge or resources. And so from that, PASHI was born, the terrible acronym and all. The key purpose of PASHI is to give people a tool to see what units in Portland area are designated as affordable. And then in conjunction with that, give them an idea of the safety or the crime that's in that area as well. And it's all right now, for now, it's based off of the zip code. Ultimately, my goal with this was to allow users to make an informed decision. So this kind of little begs the question of a little bit of like, what's affordable housing? And basically affordable housing is that an individual family doesn't pay more than 30% of their gross monthly income. And as a side note to that, about a third of renters actually pay over 50% of their gross income. So kind of an interesting thing there. So moving on to the project itself, PASHI was built to be user-centric. So very simple, easy to use, and highly accessible for people of any means to be able to kind of look at that. And so making sure that it was mobile friendly was really a big deal. So here it is, PASHI in Safari. And then I built it out so that it was very easily accessible to an iPhone SE as well. So that was kind of my base model for the display for people, because I wasn't sure if people were going to actually have access to desktops. The anonymous user can just come to the website, and it's very simple. You have the search functions right here. They can search by all the available housing that's available through the alphabetical list, the zip code, or through the safety index. So for example, alphabetical, safety index, which is probably what most people are going to go to, right? They're going to want to look at that safety rank right away, and they can immediately look and see, okay, this is the safest housing unit that's actually listed right now. And they can call, so the contact information is there. If they want more information on, let's say, the Albina Plaza, so for whatever reason, these weren't available, they can come up to the Albina Plaza and get more detailed information when they select it out. And so in this case, it gives them a little bit more information on the amount of bedrooms and the management that's there as well. It also, of course, gives them the amount of units that are available there. So this is for anonymous. It's also for users that log in. If the users decide to sign up and go through a sign up, they can log in. So I have my son here, which I hope will use this next year versus my basement. But when they do sign in, they have the ability to do the searches, the same thing. But then they will have the ability to be able to save it and then display those saved indexes as well. So I started to work on this. I decided not to completely break my project, so it's not quite ready to go. But this will be the next thing that I actually work on with PASHI. So going on from here, PASHI itself was built, if you'll notice my framework, it's built with skeleton framework, which I modified specifically for my purposes. On the back end, I used the Django REST framework. Down here, when users do first log in, they'll see the 5 Ws, or the 4 Ws in this case. It just kind of gives them an overview of what the website is about and what it can do for them. I have not populated the resources yet, but there's a wealth of resources for housing for people. But they can click on the About, and that'll bring them to the GitHub page. So I spent a ton of time, maybe too much time, on my documentation for the PASHI project. And basically it just gives an overview of the entire project, what the features are, kind of what my goals were. So I spent about, oh gosh, at least 3 or 4 days of putting this together, putting the project milestones together. But it kind of gives you a real overview of the entire project, of what I did, how I did it. I ended up also using it as my project management tool as well. So I could just go in here and I would just kind of check off things. So I already had my list of what I wanted to do. And then I would just come in here and kind of check it off as I went. Spent a lot of time on this administration portion because it was really important to me. One is I wanted to have like my MD file, which is this README file, to set up the model for the entire project itself, which I built out. My file structure of how I had my file structure built out. So that it was kind of a big deal to me. And then I had notes as well that I took almost every day on kind of what I did, that people can kind of go in and check out if they were interested in how I got to where I got. Continuing on with the documentation, my data sets came from the Portland crime data. So I went and downloaded the most recent crime data, which is 2020, and that's what I actually used to build out my models. The affordable housing inventory came from the state of Oregon. I think they update it, but it is from 2019. But it was all of the housing, affordable housing that's in the state of Oregon and then I kind of pulled out everything that was Multnomah County. Secondary files or data that I had to pull in were zip codes. And I'll show you a little bit more about that a little bit later, but a lot of the data that I got from from Portland and also from Oregon, I had to actually modify, so they didn't have zip codes to it. So I had to go out, figure out the address and assign a zip code to that specific address. Whereas also the City of Portland crime data just showed neighborhood. They didn't have a zip as well. And that was the only way I was going to be able to link these two sets of data together. App framework, kind of went through all that, built out the structures. The biggest piece here though, that I would want to show you is the data set prep that I had to do with it. So I had to go in, and not only did I have to pull the data, but then I had to interpolate that data and assign values to, let's say, crimes, essentially. Based off of the severity of that crime, I gave it a value. Then I added it all up for that area. And then based off of that, I was able to kind of rank it out for the different zip codes. So I kind of I listed all that out, all the methodology I used for all the crime data. I did do a discussion on the data set logic because there is inherent bias in all this, right? So you're never going to have a perfect sets of data when you're sitting there trying, when you're starting to interpolate. And I think it could definitely be made better. Like you could get a little bit more granular with what you're doing with your data. But for my purposes, I think it kind of worked out okay. Here's my models. I started out with the housing data itself, which lists, so that's my main model, which everything is linked to. I have a join table that goes with users for a many-to-many relationship. And then here's the neighborhood data, which is like a many-to-one relationship with the housing data. Front end. So unfortunately, the bulk of my time was spent doing a lot of that administration and then kind of getting that back end kind of built out. So my front end didn't get as much love, but I still was able to kind of push through and do okay with that. But there are some stuff like adding dynamic content I wasn't able to get to. Let's see, for the future. So as I kind of went along, I kind of kept populating out future development. And so I'd love to have pop-ups that explain the data. I'd like to use ArcGIS to actually have mapping. So instead of just showing a whole display of data, you can actually would be able to see it on a map. I think it's so much more easier for a user. I think it'd be interesting to have a rating system for each of the housing units for people to kind of come in and just say, hey, you know, a thumbs up, thumb down. I'm not sure about comments, how that would go. I'd like to add more crime data sets. So I only use 2020. I'd like to go out maybe 5 years and average that data out. Rental costs, I think, would be huge, right? So it's great to see this data, but if you can't see what that rental cost is, you know, like you could immediately maybe just throw it out based off of the, you know, what's affordable for them. Let's see, more additional fields. I'd really like to do a violence index and a property index. And so what I mean by that is, so I just have this crime ranking, which it ranks, you know, it assigned values to different crimes. But what if you don't really care maybe so much about the property crime? You just care if the people are getting assaulted and murdered or something like that. I think that would be interesting to be able to give that option to people to take a look at that. Images for the housing units, I think would be a big deal. To show you a little bit of my data. Unfortunately, I can't really show you the crime data. It was about 53,000 lines, and GitHub won't actually open that file. But here's my housing data.
A little low on time, Ron, so go ahead and
yeah. So this is about 350 units. One of the issues that popped up is when I started to populate this out, which was in the past 2 days, I hate to admit, I realized that pagination was going to be a huge issue for that when it went to display. So I still have to kind of work on that, but that's the data for that. And this is the neighborhood data. So this is actually where from almost 50,000 lines, this is what I basically got out of the crime data. And this is the crime index and the amount of crimes that actually occur based off of the zip code that's there. So eventually I'd actually like to break this out and actually use neighborhood or quadrants, so northwest, southeast, stuff like that. Okay, I think that's all I got. I can take any questions.
Beautiful documentation. Great job.
Thank you.
Most impressive.
Thank you.
all right. Yeah, awesome job, Ron.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I kind of want to second what was said about kind of the documentation and being able to. That's really great. Kind of being able to see kind of exactly what's going on, especially when you're doing something data intensive like that. It's really nice to both for yourself and for other people to kind of see all the methodology and kind of exactly what's going on.
Thanks.
So Matthew, you're up next.
Everybody, I am Matthew Chimenti. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I think I have a wide monitor, so if it's not in the best viewing, let me know. So I made basically a fitness app. I made it because I get really annoyed with every single one I've ever used. Basically trying to record calories compared to like how much you're working out is, I've never found an interface that did anything besides make me stop using it. So that's why I got to this point. So as you can tell from this main screen, I have users set up. Real quick, I'll just let you glance. There's a certain amount of information that's required. Everything in here is required except for email, which I just kind of threw in there for future use. But it's going to run an algorithm off this data. So it's needed. So here's a logged in user, Alf. Immediately, you'll kind of see that it's a lot of forms. And so right here, you have your idea of like, here's how much you're supposed to eat today. Here's how much you need to, how much you have consumed and how much you still need to consume. Right here, you can kind of see the same thing as set up when you make your profile. You're going to identify things like your gender, height, weight, blah, blah, blah. But importantly, there's activity level and fitness goal. Basically, you know, if you're someone who's, I want to lose as much as I can, and I'm also working out really hard, if you update that, it's going to change the algorithm, which will reflect down here and right here. So like the targeted calories, for instance, is going to be a lot different, 2516, than if it's the polar opposite, The person wants to bulk with not doing much activity at all. Yeah, and it's going to factor off those as well. So with it, pretty simple. I have a history section here. If I add in something like tacos, I can do the amount of calories. So let's say 76. And let's say that the servings is he had 6 tacos. It's going to add it down there. Pretty much just displays it as is. Down here, it gives you a reflection of it. Let's add in a little bit more calories here. Ice cream, 900, 2 servings. So you can see kind of a easy comparison of like, here's where you're at and here's where you need to go, with the calories consumed being orange and the target calories being blue. Right above it here, it's kind of reminds you of those weight goals. The kind of idea is you can tell on the graph what you need to do and where you need to go. With all this kind of stuff, it's kind of a soft science. I'm using the Ben-Herdis equation, a revised version of it, which basically takes in, I'll show my code for this, a good amount of stat lines for just who you are. Hold on, let me actually scroll to it. Okay. There we go. So it's going to define things like the weight, and it's going to translate it too. But then, you're going to see this line, which is really important. BMR equals these numbers times the converted weight times this and this and this. Honestly, I don't even know what these mean. It's, someone, probably the PhD, defined all this stuff years ago. It's really just a good way of looking at it instead of like an overall rule. The math still continues. That's where you get like the high and moderate, and then it's going to factor into like how much you've had, and then basically it pumps out the actual calories math. As I kind of said before, like if anyone knows what the your BMI is, body mass index, that's a really easy one to show how it just doesn't work a lot of times. Body mass index says that I am severely overweight. It's also one of the reasons why I really think that the fitness tracker is helpful, in my opinion, because what you want to do is be able to constantly record what you've done instead of just looking at pure numbers, because pure numbers are subjective. It's different per person. It's different per metabolism. It's different on how you really consider your workout, because, I mean, someone could swim for 2 hours and really push themselves, or someone could swim for 2 hours and kind of be treading water. It's really the only way of truly knowing is looking at your results over time. On that topic, I don't actually have time in here yet. That's something that I'm going to add in probably in the next day or two. But basically, and you actually can see that it does identify the date. You're going to be able to go back and forth, and it's going to reset per day. So like when I'd log into this tomorrow, these would all be gone, and then it would just be a fresh day. And then on the graph and data, you'll be able to see it. Let me see, I'm at 5 minutes. One thing I'll show you guys here is my the actual graph, which I wrote down the thing, 415. So this is charts.js right here. You can see that it's in my views. Basically, it was surprisingly easy. You pretty much just choose a type, like line, a bar graph, anything like that. You give it labels, you give it a color, and it kind of does the rest for you. Down here, there's some extra options, but it's not really, it gets kind of the result out pretty easy without trying very hard. The hardest part about me figuring out how to use this was just the kind of silly mistake of it was originally put in the top of my views, which broke it. So yeah, it's not very difficult. I'm going to play around with it more and make it do fancy things. Right now, I am still working on some asynchronous data problems that have been kind of like the name of the game for my project. Let me see. So the algo is on 324, according to what I wrote down. And you can see here, what is that? It starts here and it's going to run. So as just kind of an easy way of showing you with my comments, I have it running here, but before I had it running here as well. And I've been playing with it. And the reason kind of why is since JavaScript's asynchronous, I immediately kind of ran into this issue of, well, I have the algorithm, but now I'm playing with the data. But often the way I was playing with the data would happen before the algorithm finished. And so I sit here and refresh it over and over and over and over. And it'd be like 1 out of 10 times these numbers would change. And that has been kind of the Goliath of my project, which has been good understanding and allowed me to kind of figure stuff out. But it's also been a big head scratcher. One way I'm combating it, and I need to actually do some more, is this watch function in views, or not function, but method, essentially. I guess it's not technically a method, but basically it says when this piece of data happens, there's a function that does get graph. So that should make this graph happen afterwards, essentially, which is pretty cool and helped solve that issue. Yeah, and that's right at 7 minutes. So questions?
What was
I
your
just want
favorite
to say,
part?
Matt, that your CSS looks really good. I was really impressed with your the way your forms turned out.
Thanks. I actually don't like it. I discovered really quickly that forms, like I feel pretty confident in my CSS, but like forms are not a fun thing to style because they're just, no matter what you do, it's kind of just like it's just going to be data. And oh, actually I have it set up for like iPhone where it's going to do that. Cause I think the majority of this would be like an app, but yeah, I appreciate that.
What was your favorite part?
My least favorite part was figuring out the users. My favorite part, I think once I actually started getting the numbers on page, there was a long period of time before any of this was showing up. And even when it was showing up incorrect, like even when I got numbers that were incorrect, I was like, okay, well, now it's actually is making sense and I can play with it. Yeah, so I don't know. The moment when the actual number, for a long time, it was just this list right here. It was just weird variables and numbers. And then once I actually got any of this showing up, it like quickly transformed into something. So I like that.
All right. Any other questions for Matthew?
It looks really
All right.
good.
All right. Nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah, so our next student is John.
Thanks, Merritt. Go ahead and share my screen. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Fial, and my project is called Childhood Canvas. It's probably one of the simpler projects here. So I'll go ahead and talk about some of the background, and then I'll do a quick visual presentation, talk about the code, and then talk about where I'm going with the future. That'll actually probably be my longest section. So these windows moved. So as a little bit of a background, me and my wife have a 2-year-old toddler, and we try to be kind of balanced with screen times. We're not Luddites. After 10 years with a smartphone, I actually gave up my smartphone about 2 years ago. I'm very happy with the feature phone. And my wife, will give him a little bit of a screen time. But what I was looking for is a toddler-specific computer interactive sort of operating system, if you will. I'll use that phrase at the end when I talk about the future more. Something that's very keyboard specific. So it's not getting him on the mouse where he's using right hand versus the other hand, but giving him feedback with keys on the screen. And that sort of locks him into that visual. So I didn't see that, so that's what I wanted to focus on. So I'll go ahead and show you the project. It is just one page. And this is the visual demonstration. This is sort of a, it's meant to be an operating system. I've got my main HTML5 JavaScript canvas right here. This is someone else's canvas project online. The credits are right here. I like the tree, so I wanted to put it in there for him. And basically, it's meant that he presses a key. So I got the W key. My CSS messed that up that I just did today. And right now you can see all that a random key is doing is putting a random color, randomly positioned circle on the screen. So it's very easy to change, but it gives him a little bit of a feedback. And the next step that I added was just getting certain letters to give a graphic on screen. So the E key gives him a little bit of an elephant, the space bar changes things, B gives a butterfly, and D gives a dolphin. My wife speaks Spanish, and so we're trying to teach in both languages. I'm focusing on stuff where, you know, E is elephant, that's elefante in Spanish, dolphin is delfin in Spanish, so the letter is the same. And right now, he cannot click and drag these, so he gets bored with it, anywhere from 20 to 90 seconds. It's very, very basic. And I do have him where he can press the 1, 2, and 3 keys, where those will bring up some of his favorite videos. So this is a Hawaiian music video that my dad has shown him. Our family's from Hawaii. And so the next step on that is to get the video in an embedded player here. And then if I get that, within the coming weeks, I can probably limit his video time to, you know, say 10 minutes a day or something within this application. But it's very, very simple. That's it right there. I'm going to go over the code in the next section. And the code is equally simple, like you can imagine. It is running in Django. And you saw, even though I have that, sorry if the computer's lagging, even though I have the the users able and custom user model in Django, I'm not saving any data about the users yet. That's the final thing I'll talk about in the future section. Just simple HTML, everything's in there. And I did actually load this into a JavaScript file and not put it in the HTML, but I've got all the static files loaded. And so this is some of the code, very simple. It's I switched last week from vanilla JavaScript canvas to a JavaScript library called Conva, which works pretty well with Vue. And so I've gotten a bunch of vector graphics. In the coming days, I'm going to get, you know, maybe 30 or 40 more graphics and put them in there for him to keep him interested. And one of the more interesting things about the code, that big thanks to Pete for helping me do this, was figuring out how to get the key presses simply in here and not having a bunch of if-thens. And so Pete showed me, you know, it looks really nice and clean how to get an object with arrow functions where the spacebar will go to this clear canvas function, and everything that's a 1 is just performing the default function. So filling this out was not what I wanted to focus on the last week, because it's going to be really easy for me to take, you know, 1 to 3 hours and get 20 to 50 more images loading there. And so that's the code. Again, it's a very simple, basic project. And to close up, I want to talk about where I'm going with the future. So as you can imagine, in the coming 2 weeks or so, there's a lot of good documentation on Convo, which is one of the reasons I selected it after looking at multiple libraries. One is called Fabric, one is called paper.js. I want him to be able to draw with the mouse. That's a basic function, to click and drag and even resize these images on the screen. And add some audio eventually, maybe you know, a dolphin splashing or whatnot. But there's a 3-step here that I have for the keyboard, which, you know, maybe some of the more advanced folks don't think is ambitious. It's pretty ambitious for me. And the first step is just to have a keyboard map, which instead of, you know, him pressing the E key and showing key E there, it shows on the visual keyboard. That's pretty simple. The next step is to give the adult a mouse over event where the adult can see, you know, oh, if the kid presses the O key, it's going to show up oranges. But really the goal that I don't know if I'll get to this year or this, you know, February or not at all, is to have each individual user, the parent ideally, be able to program what each key does. And so O could bring up for you a picture of an orange. For me, I could program it to bring an embedded video player of some orange juice, making cartoon or reel, whatever it is. And each parent could have different models for different kids. You know, what you might want for your 18-month-old is going to be different for your 36-month-old. But again, I'm really targeting with this project in the future that specific 12 to 36-month-old age range for toddlers, because there's a ton of stuff out there for 3-4-year-olds and over. But that's what I'm focusing. And there's a good population of toddlers out there. So it's a very specific, maybe what's the word, fringe, specific subset of the population. But that's what I'm going for. And the biggest thing that excites me about the project is that today is a presentation milestone, but I'm no less motivated tomorrow to work on the project, whether it's 45 minutes a week or 45 minutes a day. He's going to keep asking me to see this for the coming years. And I'm going to have to say, well, I got to keep developing it because I don't want him to get too much screen time. And I want his screen time to be motivating me to keep coding. So that's it. Do we have any basic questions?
What's the target age group of?
Just toddlers. So anywhere from babies where they can click things to where they get bored, to where the parent says, all right, I'm going to give you, MS Paint or whatever else it is, and let them draw. So that's what I didn't see, is that you'll notice everything we built in class was really easy to get responsive design. I had some responsive design with the early vanilla JavaScript canvas, but I just let that go. So I made it specifically for our screen size, the common 1900 by 1200, whatever. So that would be a future step, is getting it responsive. But I have no interest in getting this on smartphones because I want it to be keyboard and mouse, or just keyboard. I should have gone first because I know I had the smallest minimum viable project.
I think it looks great. I would say though, if you want to reach that broad audience though, not everybody does have access to computers or desktops and stuff like that. So it might be kind of, if, even a big phone might be fun for a kid, to kind of play on. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be a future. And that's something I thought about the other day. I was looking up how many toddlers there are, how many babies are born. And there's 3 to 4 million babies born in the US every year. So at any given time, there's maybe 8 million toddlers in the US. And if I take the fraction of toddlers whose parents don't want them to have a third parent, which is the smartphone, that's really tempting to do as a parent with a young kid. Here is a smartphone, give us 20 minutes alone. But the fraction of parents who just want their kids to interact with the computer, but within strict limits. I don't know how many software options there are out there that lock the computer for that age group, but there were not a lot of options I saw that focused on keyboard interaction. So you can imagine easily we can make this next week, bring up the letter for him, and then I can add a sound so he quickly learns the 26 letters and so on and so forth. But I'll think about mobile, so thank you for that.
Hey, John, I think it looks really awesome. It's about my age group, but I'm really hypnotized by the growing tree there. What is that? How did you do that?
So the tree is not mine. I found it online, and the link is here. It's a CodePen link by this person. So you can modify the code. I think it's, I'll show it real quick. I know I'm over time, but again, I took it. Yeah, so the draw tree. So I modified some of this, but you can see this is a page and a half. It's not long at all, just the branches. And the project is deployed at, you can go to GitHub/JohnFial or johnfial.python anywhere. It's up there, and all the code is public. Even the original secret key I used in Django. So I learned, I had a lesson learned on that. But I'm over time. I'll give it back to Merritt unless any smaller questions. Thank you.
All right, nice work. Looks good.
Thanks.
All right, so we're about halfway down. We're 4 down, 5 to go. So it's a good time, I think, to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. And we'll come back at 3:03 or so. And Dan will be our next student when we come back. See you all back here in 5 minutes. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to go ahead and keep going. Our next presentation is from Dan.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Dan,
And can everyone see can you see my screen? Merritt, can you see my screen? Yeah, okay. So my project is called Dinner Dates. It's essentially like a social media app that allows the user to focus on going to restaurants in their general area. I like it to be so it's focusing on restaurants that, one, you like to frequent, and two, that you've never been to before. And ultimately invite friends to go out to dinner with you. So I'll go ahead and demo it real quick. That, okay. So log in, test user 1. So it's a single page app. You get in there and you're going to want to enter in your address. So I have a form for that. Here I use a Google locations API. You enter in your address and then it'll return a list. If there's multiple addresses, it'll return a list. And you just verify it. Click it, then it goes to the database. You want to enter in your preferences. So you just, this is from a Yelp API, all this stuff. Enter your preferences, how much you want to spend, the rating, distance, and how often a month you want to eat out. We'll say 13, that's a lot. Then you want to submit those changes. That also goes to the database. Then you search the restaurants, and it returns a list of restaurants meeting your requirements or your preferences. And each one of these is then, like, you can check them out. You don't like them, you search again. A new list comes up, you want to check it out, click it, takes you to Yelp. You can review the Yelp page. And if you like this list of restaurants, you can submit them. And that goes to your database, and then you schedule dinner. And then, oh no. Did I not submit something? Okay, well, that's doing whatever it's doing. I'll show you guys my code. So I have two APIs in here. I have one for the users. I did a custom user model specifying some additional fields that I wanted to add to the database, as well as a restaurant API. The users stores just the typical custom user format, custom user form information. And then I specified all this other stuff here, which is what was chosen in the preferences and address. And then per user, so we'll go to user 2, and we can get a specific look at all their information, what categories they like, all their preferences, as well as what this will eventually be a list of restaurants they've had assigned to them and gone to. Then I also have the restaurants API. This one is not user specific as far as going to the API address. It's just a list of literally every restaurant that's been saved in the database, user independent. So this is user 1, you have user 3, and then in the code, when I call the API is when I will filter through and grab what I need. I'm not sure why this is freezing. Let's go back in there. Well, I'll show you guys a different user then, if I can get this. I don't know why it's happening like that. Anyways, So I had two apps. I had a dashboard app, which is where you see all this information. That's what's happening here. And then I also have the custom users app. And I've specified those additional fields here in the custom user model. Typical API set up with the serializers specifying everything I want to go into my APIs. In my JavaScript, I wanted to make my JavaScript as modular as possible so I can move it around in different things. So I have one main script, which is getting my current user. And then I'm just in my HTML, I'm just doing the binding for the current user into each app that I've, or component that I've created. So then in get preferences, that's, let's start with get location. Location is where you got your user address. I really just focused on doing as much stuff with JavaScript and in Django because I wanted to get really familiar with it. So that was like my goal and all this stuff. This is my Google API request. Then I send in address and latitude and longitude. Then I'll use that to in the get places API when I pass in, because you have to use the latitude and longitude for the Yelp API. So that gets passed in there. What else? One of the trickiest things for me to do is just get all these buttons working. I'm not sure why it keeps crashing. I will log in as a different user. Susie Q. She's already got some stuff saved in here. So we'll just search restaurants. Okay, well, I don't know why it's popping up, but when it does work, this is what happens. It puts all the restaurants on your list on the calendar for you. So you can say, okay, great, I'm gonna go to Senor Latino Grill on the 15th. A nice to have would be eventually grab it and have the user move it to where they want and have that update in the database. As well as like keeping track of like this week's restaurants have gone to this or want to invite this friend. So you send them like a push notification or something. A lot of functional buttons to hide and show things. I wanted that to be a focus. Hide and show here. Update your address. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions? Okay.
How does it populate your calendar? Is it just like randomly assigning one of the restaurants into a random date?
Yeah, so the calendar is one issue that I had a big problem with. I built a calendar app and had it like all the code done. And then when I tried to run it, it didn't work. So the calendar is something I had to hard code in there. So the restaurants, the string of restaurants are stored in the database. And then I'm getting the restaurants with an Axios call to my API. And then I'm assigning them to a restaurant's array. And then I'm just going to filter through that array as many times as the user specified that they would like to go out to eat. And then it'll create a random, it'll generate as many random digits as the frequency is here. So like if they want to go out to eat 8 times, 8 random numbers, 0 through the length of the list of restaurants. And then here it actually pulls from that list of restaurants based off of the array index. So it's kind of matching the two up. And then and then I go down here and I say this month specifying the day. Then I'll specifically say the restaurant name is this, URL is this, image is this, and then it results in that.
Pretty cool.
Hey Dan, how many custom components did you end up making?
I have 4 custom components and then I'm just putting everything in a main script file. Because I want to be able to use these things for different apps that I build in the future. And now I can just pull, like if I need it, I actually use this for the API or the view capstone that we did. I just pulled it over and then use it again.
Awesome, looks great. And yeah, you definitely get bonus points for being one of the only people to. I know I spent so much time telling you guys, encouraging you guys to use components in your view apps. So you definitely get bonus points for actually doing that and kind of dividing everything up and kind of doing that. Kind of all that the way it lets you do everything modularly and everything. So yeah, nice job. And Mark, you're up next.
Oh, hey everybody, I'm Marc Lowe. I am, we're not doing this. In another life, I'm an airline pilot for United Airlines. Since the pandemic hit and everything, I've been basically sitting at home in kind of a limbo state since last March. I haven't touched an actual airplane, but in the flying time, a lot of times I'm commuting from one airport to another. What a lot of people don't know is if you're a pilot or a flight attendant, you're based somewhere, and I'm based out of San Francisco, but I live in Portland. So a lot of times at the end of a trip, I need to get home, and the airline's only responsible to get me back to San Francisco. So if a trip breaks up in Chicago, I got to figure out how to go from Chicago to Portland if I want to get home. So I had an idea to work on an app. It's not unique in any way. There's these tools that people use, flight attendants, pilots, kind of a flight app, looks all the flights up from one place to another, but I decided to create my own. I'll have to show it to you, I guess, if you are going to get anything from this. So I'll do that. My little flight app here is called Flugleit, and it's all optimized mostly for a mobile phone size because that is what you're going to be using it on. Basic login screen. You log into Flugleit. And here you are. Now it is responsive, so I'm just going to go full size here so everybody can see what's going on here. But it's just a simple idea, easy interface. You log in, you can type any airport in the world, and vastly unorganized list pops up, which is one of the things I'm still working on, but it does pop up for you. Let's go Seattle to Portland. That's a normal commute for a lot of pilots. Click on that and let's go to Portland. PDX should pop up. There it is. And we'll populate it with today's flights on the 21st. So find me a flight, get me home. And it's depending on some API from multiple APIs actually, but it does an API call there, and it brings up all the flights from Seattle to Portland leaving today. And we're past all of these departures, but down here we got a few more here. And what time is it? We're at 3:18. So what happens a lot of times is you're fighting other people to find the only free seat or left on an airplane. So you're trying to strategize which one is the best to go for, and you're willing to run for it. If if 334 is nearby, you want to be able to run over to that. So you're going to hit this check flight status, and this will give you the departure gate, and it'll give you an arrival gate. It'll tell you the scheduled arrival and the estimated arrival. So this is key information that I'd like to highlight at some point to make it a little more obvious, but you can compare these two things. to see if you're actually going to be landing on time, because that's the big thing. A lot of times you'll see scheduled departure at 4 or scheduled route 4:31, but this estimated arrival will say like 5:45. So then, you know, screw that flight. I'm going somewhere else. I'm going down here to check old 3:35 departure. And here, scheduled arrival. Oh, this is a little bit late, but it's all right. It's all right. It gives me an extra minute to run to that gate to D4. I won't be checking any bags, but you got that information if you want it. And then if I want to, I can save this flight for later. And you can trust me that that flight is saved, which I can clear the list and I can go to my saved flights and look at all the flights that I might catch. And the ones that I don't need anymore, I can just get rid of when the days past. And similar to the other screen, you can bring up the flight status. It's got a bunch of big buttons because pilots are simple creatures. We like giant buttons, easy to interface. And that is basically all the functionality of the app. I'll get into the code a little bit here because that is always the most exciting part. Everybody wants to hear about the code. It's all built on Django REST framework, which we've all been working on, which is something I have, if the knowledge of Django REST framework is $1, I have about 5 cents worth of knowledge on Django REST framework, just enough to get it to work. But I was able to create a user logon and create a REST framework serializer that has my own data set, which I'm excited about. But the majority of all my work went into working with exterior aviation APIs, and all the heavy lifting is done on one massive page on the home HTML. I've got the View app loaded on this page, and if I could do it all again, I would separate it out, but there's no time because I was definitely going to break this. It's being held together right now by a piece of gum and some tin foil, but we're making calls to 3 different APIs. The most important one is the Cerium flight data, which has all the data I need. I looked forever to find an aviation API that had to meet some certain keys. It had to have the data I needed, and it had to be free. And this met those requirements, but it turns out it has some issues with the CORS return. So I had to figure out, I didn't really have to figure out, Pete, big shout out to Pete, help me with this, finding an exterior CORS wrapper that makes the whole thing work. But if that guy decides to quit keeping that up, then my data will no longer work. And then there's another one in here that gets the, that is responsible for the functional auto drop down of all the airports in the world. And that is this Aviation Edge, which is a little bit, actually a little bit beefier place to get data. They have multiple APIs there that I would, if I were to redo or restructure some aspects of it, I would probably build it all off this Aviation Edge API. And then you can see, using the View app, I've had to manipulate the data that comes back because a lot of it is useful, but a lot of it is not in human consumption form. So a lot of the time was spent manipulating this stuff so that it could actually be presented on a screen that anybody would understand. And if you're running and sweating and trying to find the next flight home, you could look at it easily and not get flustered. That is about the extent of what I got going on here. Does anybody have any questions?
I want to say, Mark, I don't think I ever noticed that you have a, this is your captain speaking voice until you did this presentation.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. I'm working on it for a while.
You should have started every class with a, status update, weather at the end of the day.
Just tell us the weather.
Yeah, and the estimated time of finishing class for the day, estimated lunchtime, that kind of thing.
Mark, what do you think you'll add for the future?
Yeah, good question. You know, it's very functional at this point with active airports for direct flights. But a lot of times, you know, usually when you're really trying to get from one place to another, it's when there's a giant snowstorm in Chicago or Denver or something, and everything's broken and flights are oversold. So a lot of times you got to hitch a ride on a way you're not thinking, like I've flown through Omaha, Nebraska to get to Chicago from Denver. So you look for alternate routes. So in the future, I'd love to, you know, kind of give it some strategy to it so that you can, it'll give you back, you know, multi-leg flights that'll get you home, you know, ways that you're not thinking about. And then there is a whole lot of other useful data that comes back with these aviation APIs to parse through, including weather and airport information and stuff like that. And I think I'd love to add some of that functionality.
Do you have to, as the pilot, if they leave you in that scenario, are you responsible for the full price of the ticket?
No, there's very few times I've actually had to buy a ticket. You basically, with your when you're working for a major airline, you have an ID that almost works like the best bus pass in the world. So you just show up at a flight and you're just basically hitching a ride all the time. But very few times would I ever actually break down and buy.
So it's more of they don't do that. So it sounds like the problem is that they don't do the legwork for you. Not necessarily they're not going to provide it for you. They're just like, yeah, you're going to figure out the route, and that's the.
Well, no, the big thing is they don't care one way or another if you get home or not, but you want to get home. So, you know, if you get stuck somewhere, you're going to have to find a way home or sleep at the airport is basically, you know, it's a weird problem, but. But there is some functionality I think that could be used for the average citizen walking around who's like, even just as far as finding gate information or, you know, random airport information that you might need. I don't know. There's stuff in there.
All right, nice work.
Thanks.
Next up is Steven.
All right, hey everybody. This is QuarterMaster. It is a pantry inventory manager application, and basically you can add all the food in your pantry or your fridge, and you can track your expiration dates and you know, basically know on the go when you're at the grocery store what you have at home, when it's going to expire. And so let's go ahead and log in. And it'll take you to your pantry page, and this is basically the items that I've added in here so far. And it has modals built in so that you can add new items. A bag of croutons, put that under the bread category. And now you'll see it's added croutons here. It pulls the pictures from the Spoonacular API. It's not perfect. If you put in something that's not generic like this, it'll just come up with a generic like image not found. But for most things, you can find it for food ingredients. It will give you this here if it's within 1 week. The expiration date is within 1 week. It'll pop up like this. You can update the quantity. You can, let's see here, you can sort by category. You can search. So if I'm looking for celery, it'll just come up with that. You can search for brands that you put in, categories, or title name. If you want, you can add things to your grocery list. and then it will pop up here, and then you can just remove them as need be. And that's pretty much, that's the basics of it. For the code, it's basically, I did the same thing where I just put everything into basically one big template with my View app, and it ended up being huge. And I'm with Mark that I wish I would have broken it up earlier. But my View app is here. I had a tag system, but it wasn't working out for me, so it ended up getting cut. Pulls from my API based on either search term or just getting them by all. You can sort by category with this function using arrow functions. My post for putting up new items. Let's see here. This for Spoonacular. Spoonacular it's a really cool website. It has a really robust API, but unfortunately most of it's behind a paywall. And I found out that my 100 points per day just in testing filled up really quick. But there's like, you can get nutritional info, recipes, and all that stuff that maybe later I could implement in. Let's see here. Basically just patching whatever I needed to do, like updating the, whether it's in the grocery list or, you know. All right, let's see here. A big one that was a real struggle for me was this factoring in the expiration dates. I spent a couple days trying to just tinkering with it. I finally came across the Moment.js, which really helped me out with it, which is this here. Basically takes your expiration date and current time and then calculates the difference. But I tried a ton of stuff before I tried that. And yeah, and a real big challenge for me was just basically making it so that there's a lot of conditionals on what's showing at what time, like my grocery list and all that. So just kind of figuring out to make it a single page application and hide certain things, show certain things so that, you know, it doesn't look, you know, terrible. For my models, if I can, nothing too crazy. The bulk of it's just in my pantry item here. Let's see here. Views is pretty simple as well. And then my serializers. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for it. I do have a lot of things that I plan to add when I get the chance. I would love to add a feature where I could somehow use a phone's camera to do barcode scanning. I did some research in it. I didn't find any free options, unfortunately. But yeah, does anybody have any questions?
Do you mean using the like your phone as the barcode scanner?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I have it. It's responsive because basically, ideally, you want to like use this at a grocery store to just see what's at home, you know, and it'd be real easy to just, okay, what do I have on my grocery list? Oh, hold on. And then just boom. And yeah.
On behalf of my my pack rat parents, since this video is being recorded, I won't state the stuff I've found in their pantry over the years. But is this deployed? And if not, when will it be deployed so we can sign up?
Oh, well, hopefully tomorrow with Pete's workshop, I'll get it online. It'd be great if, you know, people would actually get on and sign up and try it out. That'd be really cool.
All right, any other questions? All right, nice job, looking good.
Thank you.
So we got 2 presentations coming up here. Our second to last is Austin. Take it away.
So my capstone was an interactive Russian textbook. And before I talk about the features, I wanted to talk a little bit about the reasons I developed this and the problems it solves. So first, obviously, most Russian textbooks are not interactive. They're paper. And it's difficult for an individual learner to do much other than memorize grammar rules. Traditional textbook doesn't let you know what Russian sounds like. So that was one of the goals. The other side of this is that apps like Duolingo, or there is one online Russian textbook, or even Rosetta Stone, give you individual words, or maybe one sentence that's not created for social interaction. And so Duolingo is great for learning vocabulary words, but if you're going to have a really hard time making your own Russian sentences, you're going to have a hard time understanding what a Russian person is saying to you. And that's what I mean by authentic materials. Materials that native speakers create for other native speakers, because it's exposure to that as children that helps us learn a language. And it's the same for adults. And just to kind of give you an example of the gap in the market, this website has been presented to me more than once by professional second language acquisition professors saying, "Oh, this is an amazing resource because it's got recordings of real news broadcasts that students can listen to and they can do some activities." But look at this website. It's really hard to use. It's got ads all over the place. When you click on these links, more ads might come up. The audio, it closes the window, so it's not embedded. And then you have to go someplace else and scroll down to get the activities, which, no one's going to do. If you look at these activities, right, it's a fill in the blank that's just HTML. And this is for English. And English is a gigantic global market. And stuff like this doesn't exist for English. So it definitely doesn't exist for Russian either. And that was what I was trying to address with this project. So it's designed to be for beginners, but also perhaps as a supplement to a course that has an instructor. So the emphasis is really on video and on authentic materials to allow people to hear the language. And then there are activities that accompany each video or sound file. So this is just the first page, and it's got a really simple, just sort of introduction to what Russian sounds like, what Russian looks like. And then chapter 1 has most of the games. And chapter 1 teaches people the Cyrillic alphabet. So it's got kind of like a video, right? The idea is they watch the video, and as they watch, they follow along with these animals that are being presented on screen, and they put, they put the words in order, right? So you're getting some sort of introduction to linking the sound to what the Cyrillic looks like. And then you can watch the video again if you don't get it right. This is the game that I was most proud of because I think it's the most useful. And it gives you the Cyrillic and you type the English equivalent. All of these words are words that exist in English and they're spelled basically the same way in Russian. Right? So I've called it a secret code, but basically once you learn the Cyrillic, if you just type the English letter that goes along with it, you're going to understand, oh, okay, that's radio, right? This is burger. So a lot of what I did was game logic and, writing if clauses and things in the JavaScript to deal with these input fields, to check if they were correct, to change the CSS if they weren't correct, and dealing with what happens when the game finishes. This is another one that I won't go through. but you're given the Cyrillic and they have to unscramble it, right? So this one, they can try a word as many times as they want, and it keeps telling them how many they got incorrect. And when you're sick of the word or you solve it, you can go to the next word. So this one is tiger, right? So T, Y, G. It shows them as correct. And the last one I think would be pretty useful as well for language learners. This is just your basic kind of matching game. They have the picture and you have to find and remember the Cyrillic word that goes with it. So I'm trying to get at least one example. I saw chocolate somewhere. There we go, fruit and fruit. And so when you get a match, it stays as it is. And then when you complete the full board, you get the option to play the game again. It will repopulate the board with new cards, in a randomized order. That took a little longer than I thought it would. I thought it'd be pretty simple to clear the board and start over. It was just like, okay, reset everything and then redo the board. But there were some steps in there that I wasn't anticipating for the randomization and getting the functions to work. So I learned a lot about JavaScript in doing this. And then they'll go to the chapter quiz. So obviously none of these activities were scored, but at the end of each chapter, and there'll be 25 chapters at the end of this, they take a quiz that's scored and they'll be able to look at it on their user dashboard. So there's a registration function with validations, a login. So so Jack took some quizzes yesterday. Sorry, I guess I thought I had a Jack on the database. Jake took some quizzes yesterday, and the quiz scores are associated with his user profile with a foreign key. So it's a one-to-many relationship, one user to many scores. And on login, the dashboard shows up. Until you're logged in, that's not an option up here in the toolbar. Let's just demonstrate really quick what happens when you take the quiz. And this is just dummy data for the quiz right now. I haven't written out all the logic for the actual quiz. But if you log in, you haven't taken any quizzes yet, it gives you this message. So I just did that with, mentioning the query from the views in the Django template, which I didn't do right for about half a day. But yeah, so I was glad that these things, as Stephen was saying, getting things to show up and disappear from the page at the right time was important to me as well. If you do take the quiz, which is the best kind of quiz right now because you get to choose your own score. So chapter 1, you'll get a 70. And now it associates your quiz score with the chapter. So that's basically the functionality. Looking forward, I'd like to make a games tab that's probably linked to either JSON data or possibly an API where the students can choose what game they want to play of a wider variety of games that are presented here, and they can choose their vocabulary list. So they can choose chapter 1 or chapter 2 or food or houses or whatever, and then play particular games with particular vocabulary sets. Even further afield, I think it'd be great to, in addition to the student dashboard, have a teacher dashboard. And if you log in as a teacher, then you can assign things and you can track progress of particular students. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I want to say thank you for going towards the end, Austin, so that it didn't make ours look as bad as it would have.
I mean, it's the CSS with you guys working with, 3 APIs and things like that. I didn't do anything with data. So I have no API here. I have lists.
It's pretty cool. It's I feel like it's very impressive.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you were in the same class with the rest of us. It would have helped me a lot in college. I took 1 year of Russian, and my instructor, Dr. Yazikov, just told me one time, like, you speak Russian very poorly. That's all I got.
That's a problem with sometimes native speakers. There was a Russian professor. Anyway, I won't talk about Russian. I was like, it's that way because if you said it another way, it would sound stupid. And so there is your reason.
But Mark, you know what? You speak English very well.
It makes me want to learn Russian because it looks like a fun game to play.
Cool. Well, it will be deployed tomorrow, Pete, pending your assistant.
Yeah, well, that's
with the animated like letter animals and everything.
That's a YouTube video. So I didn't do that one, but you should watch the video. Everyone should watch.
Yeah, you'll have to get it deployed so that we can link to follow the links and check out the videos. All right. Yeah, nice job. Looks great. All right. So we got one last, but certainly not least, project left. And that is Peter. Go ahead and take us home.
Everyone, so my name is Peter, and I have a very basic CRUD app for my project, so it's kind of unfortunate that to go after Austin, but I'll show you the basic functionality of the website real quick before I show you the code. So this is a landing page. There's not much to it, but it has a sign up and login and all that. And there's 3 pages total. There's a jobs and profile page that lets you look for jobs that you can keep track of. And the profile page obviously has all the jobs that you're interested in. So that's the sign up. Whoops. So once you log in, you can start looking for jobs based on keywords, and there's not many filters on it yet because I still have quite a bit to develop. So let's say software, and you can select whatever state you want or all states if you choose to do so, which I will, and number of results. So these are all the jobs that come up. This search is using Career One Stop's API, which I believe uses the National Labor Exchange's database. So these are all the jobs that have been posted in the past 30 days, and it's sort of based on how relevant it is to your keyword. So if you are interested, there's no description for these jobs because the API doesn't have that functionality, but if you click on the link to apply, it'll take you to the website itself and show you, like, what they're looking for and any other criteria that you need to meet. So just if you are interested in the job, you can keep track of them by just clicking this. So I'll just click a bunch for show, and then once you do so, once you're done with that, you can go to your profile page and it'll load. The profile page is it holds all the jobs with using a REST API, which has these fields. So you, as for the only functionality I have with this right now is just removing them, but I do plan on adding quite a bit more to it. So just showing you that the remove function. And that's about it for the website. For the code. So I use for the pages themselves are just generic class-based views, and the models looks like this, where these are, you know, the fields that are being kept track of. And see the jobs page, it's just pretty much just 2 Axios calls with the options. The options are up top where you select the location that you want to look for jobs in. And yeah, this is the call itself right here, which is, you know, using Curry One-Stop's API. And yeah, to actually, you know, put the jobs into the REST API, I used the post Axios call, which you know, which puts the job into you know, using serializers. And let's see, the profile page itself is just pretty much the same thing. It's just it makes an Axios call to my REST API and just, you know, receives whatever data that receives all the information that's on the user's profile and just lists them. Let's see. As for like what I have stuff to get to develop, I want to build like an interactive resume builder, which I worked on for quite a bit. I just couldn't get it to work quite how I wanted it to. So I spent a lot of time doing that. I also spent a lot of time like fixing bugs, and just a lot of things broke during the project, which I learned quite a bit from. And yeah, that's pretty much it for my project. Any questions?
Does it track which companies you've actually applied to?
Yes. Well, it's in the REST API. It does it's on the left side over here. So.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Nice work. All right, so that is all the presentations that we have today. For those of you who are in other classes here at PDX Code Guild, hopefully you got a good little sneak peek at what you're going to be doing in a month or 2 or 3 when you're working on your capstones. For the rest of you who are guests, hopefully you enjoyed seeing what everybody's been working on. And for all of you, thanks for coming out and supporting all of our super hardworking students, and kind of seeing the fruits of their labor over the last just about month. It's been almost a month that these students have been working on these capstone projects now, and it's really cool to see them all kind of up and running and everything. So let's do one final round of applause. Nice job, everybody.
Yeah. Great work, people. That's very cool. Thank you for letting us see this.
So now this is when I tell you you're not done yet. Who remembers June? Anybody remember talking to June? Okay, John, Joe, okay. Get with June right away. Get plugged in. Hang out with Pete in Study Hall. Study Hall's for alumni too. You can get together. Whoa, there's Austin. Hey, Austin. Yeah, and you know, I'm here for you too. Congratulations. You guys made it through some crazy stuff, like Merritt said. And here you are. So get jobs. Let us help you with that and with whatever else you need.